Hi guys, so this is a beginner's tutorial on pastels. Now I'm not an expert on pastels. I've used them a few times, but I thought that this would be a nice video for anybody who has pastels, beginning pastels, and would like to know a little bit more about pastels and how to use them. So what I'm gonna start with is basically the color wheel. Since we're using colors, this is what I'm gonna show you guys, because it's always good to know when you're dealing with colors. Now you have three primary colors. You have yellow, red, and blue, and these colors cannot be created by other colors. They're basically beginning starter colors. They're like their first colors ever, sort of, I guess. But these colors, when you mix them, you could get any other color and basically every other color. For example, when you mix yellow and blue, you get green. And when you mix blue and red, you're going to get purple. And those colors that you're mixing in to get the second colors, they're called secondary colors. So the first colors that you have, yellow, blue, and red, those are your primary colors. And green, purple, and orange are your secondary colors. Now, I'm sure you guys know this, and this looks elementary, especially since you probably know this since you were a really little kid and you were playing with, I don't know, crayons or paints. You got these colors together. But it's really important to know, because when you're basically painting or you're working with pastels or whatever you're working with, it's really good to know the color wheel, just so then you could kind of understand what works with what. Now, another thing that's really interesting is that colors that are on the opposite of each other, they contrast, and they kind of what's it called? It kind of makes the other color pop out more. For example, when you get purple, and this is purple, although you can't really tell. Basically, when you get purple and yellow, which are opposite on the color wheel, they contrast with each other. So purple makes yellow stand out, and yellow makes purple stand out. So what happens is, if you know the color wheel and you know that these two colors make each other pop out, if you're doing a piece that has purple and you're thinking to yourself, hey, how can I make this purple pop out more? I want it to stand out more. Use yellow next to it. So that's very helpful, because if you have a piece and you want something to stand out more than other things, then kind of use that to your knowledge and use it as your tools. Okay, let's go ahead and start figuring something for us to do so that I can show you some of this color wheel things in action. Now, this is a photo of my one drawing. If you see my previous YouTube video, like flowers and chaos, this is the photo that I used to help me draw my flowers. Now, I'm using this as a little bit of reference, just so that I could kind of get some petals and kind of get the position and whatnot. But it's really nice to get a reference photo, just because when you're using colors, sometimes you want to replicate the color, so having it right in front of you helps a lot. So what I'm doing first is laying down my color. Now, it is not blended, it's straight on the paper, and the paper that I'm using is Canson mixed media paper from a sketchbook, and this is actually my sketchbook. But yeah, so you lay down the color, and if you want the colors to match, of course you're going to do a little bit of mixing, but if you're okay with the color, just lay it down first. And you have two options. You can either leave it like this or blend it, and you could blend using your finger or a piece of paper or stump. Either way is fine. A stump will help a lot if you don't want to get your fingers to be really chalky, but when you're handling pastels, it's gonna happen anyways. After that, I also added some yellow onto it, so then I could know the center of the flower. So the thing is, when it comes to pastels, depending on the pastels you're using, I'm using the chalk type pastel, the dry pastel, but there's also oil pastel. They're different, but they're not that different. They basically have technically kind of the same thing. I think oil pastels, is harder to use because it's just so messy to me. I personally like this chalk type pastel better. Anyways, back to the main topic. I'm adding a little bit of white because I want my petals to be a little lighter. Now, for those of you guys who are new to a little bit of mixing colors, you can add white to colors to make them lighter. For example, if you add red and white, you get pink. And if you have blue, like a dark blue or navy blue, you add white, then you'll get a light blue. And of course, if you add it to a lighter blue, you get even lighter blue. Now, this is my color originally. This is what happens when I add white. So you could tell that, you know, it's lighter. And all you really do is you lay your color down, and then you add more color, and you could go back in with your color again if you need it. Now, this is what happens when you add black. Now, some people believe that when you add black, you're going to get a darker color, which is true with paint, but with pastels, you have to be careful not to add too much black because sometimes it makes it muddy. Now, this isn't rule of thumb, but for those of you guys who like this type of color, or this is what you're aiming for, go ahead, add black. There's no rules against it. You could do whatever you want, experiment. If you want it that way, that's fine. Personally, I don't really like adding black to my colors, mostly because I don't like it to be muddy. I don't want it to feel kind of like I don't know, just black. I don't want it to get too muddy and dark, and I feel like it's a little messy. That's why I don't add black. Instead, with my Prismacolor New Pastels, even though it comes with these 12 colors, instead of using black, I am deciding to use blue. And I'm not using a darker blue. I'm going to be using a lighter blue. Now, this is my lighter blue. And instead of using black for shadows, I like to add a little bit of blue to change the tint of the flower. If I added pink to a lighter blue, I think it'll give me a really nice light lavender. So you gotta just practice with these colors, mix them up, don't be afraid. If any of you guys are really iffy about pastels in the beginning, get a scratch of paper and, you know, break a tiny piece off your pastel, or not break a tiny piece off your pastel, it's up to you, but practice on this little paper. Mix some colors up, see what you like, see what kind of techniques you like. Like, for example, if you don't like something, go ahead, add some more color back in if you needed to. Like for this, I felt like I blended it too much, so I went ahead and went in and used my red pastel as kind of like a marker to mark like where's the edge of the flower and little details like the curves of the flower petals and stuff like that. So that's why I used it for. So you could blend, but you could still add back and forth. It's a lot of adding and deleting, and you could erase a little bit of pastel. I think the dry pastel, but not the oil pastel, because I've erased a little bit, but it's not going to erase entirely. So just be aware of that. And so for a lot of the times when you have like drawings and flowers or something, you're gonna have parts that have light and dark, like shadows, and then your light source. So I like to add this with white, or I like to add a little bit yellow with white, which I always think is really nice, because then sometimes the white is a little too harsh, so I kind of yellow it out, which I think adds a really nice complement, as you see I'm doing here. So before, the yellow wasn't in here and the white was really bright, but when you add the yellow, it kind of makes it a little softer. Then I go back in with my blue for like little shadows in the petals, or little lines in it. So I think that's really nice to work with the blue rather than the black, because sometimes I want something softer instead of that harsh black against, you know, that pink or that red or that yellow, you know. So yeah, that is what I usually do with pastels. And if you looked at my previous video that I posted up of the flowers and chaos, that one of the pastels of the flowers, that's the technique that I used there. That's how I did it. But it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of blending. And this is different from my flower because for this drawing, it's really small. It's smaller than my hand. But for the flower one in my last video, that was a really big drawing. I was using like, I think it was like a 18 by 24 piece of paper. So the flowers were really big, so it was nice to blend on it. So when you add any white back in, if your white gets dull, that's okay too. And for this, I decided to use the black to outline my flower. Mostly because I wanted to separate it from the, I don't know, on the page, I wanted to pop out, so I did just a line around it. And then I ended up adding a little bit of black at the end and the inside of the flower. Mostly because I wanted some parts of it to kind of seem dark, because I felt like my light blue wasn't dark enough to add that in. Or I thought of this last minute, I ended up adding a little bit of dark purple into it instead of black. If you don't want to use black, you can always use like a dark purple, or you can use a dark blue. So you don't have to follow any of these instructions, but if you're using pastels for the first time, go ahead and have fun. You know, test it out, see what you like, and you know, just do what you want. Nothing bad is gonna happen. Just have fun and play around with it. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what else you like to see and if you're interested in this video. And I'll see you guys next time.